Okay, hey everybody, what's up? I've been doing a lot of research lately and decided that I think for my next little venture, I'm going to start looking into the game mechanics themselves, just kind of digging into them. I started out, you know, kind of doing all this disk testing and stuff just to get a better understanding of how the game works, and it just led to more questions, more and more questions. Like in one of my videos, I thought that since the extra fade and extra turn only affected the fade, that wind and aiming also affected the fade, which was wrong. Um, so what I ended up doing, just talking to some fellow members here, pretty much. I got in contact with Simon, who's one of the developers working with Spinoff, and asked them, hey, is it cool? If I talk a little bit about the code, kind of dig through the code and just try to get a better understanding of what's going on. So I think what we're going to do, or at least what I plan on doing, is instead of doing my normal put you to sleep hour-long video to go over every mechanic of this game, I'm going to try to blast them out in little videos, short videos. So this first one, I just want to talk about wind. We're going to talk about wind, how the wind works. Like I said, I had it wrong in my video when I was guessing. I was able to find it and get a pretty good understanding of how it works. So I do want to go over some of that stuff, just so everybody kind of better understands the wind. Obviously, you see the arrow and you're like, well, I need to account for the wind, but what is that? What is that? What does that even mean? So we're gonna look at a few scenarios, kind of get a better understanding of what the wind does, and then we'll have to talk about another couple subjects, which we'll get into that later. But let's go ahead and get started. Okay, first thing to understand would be when I see a tail, or I have this quartering away from me tailwind strong. This guy right here, this four wind. How does that affect the disc? Um, is it going to have the same effect as a straight away for tailwind or a straight right to left for side wind? And the answer is no. The way that the game works is it does wind as in two dimensions. The game's obviously three dimensions. You can aim up, down, right, left, and then throw the disc forward and back. You move in all three dimensions. The wind, however, it only works in two dimensions. So the wind will affect right to left, and then it will affect towards and aways. It does not move up and down at all. So what it does is it breaks this wind into two vectors, essentially. Now, what is a vector? Direction and magnitude, right? So this four wind is essentially broken up into a two right to left and a two straight tail. All right, and those two vectors are going to act on your disc. It's a fancy way of saying, you have to you do a little math. If this was closer to the right to left and less tail, it would be closer to like a three side wind with a one tail. Opposite if it goes up. You have to kind of you break it down essentially. So, and what does the wind do? Well, the wind pushes the disc, right? So that two right to left is going to push the disc right to left. It doesn't affect turn or anything like that. That two tailwind is going to push the disc forward. It's going to give you a little bit of extra distance. But the head tailwind has a couple extra effects as well. It will affect the turn of the disc. So if you have a tailwind, a disc that you throw, it's going to have less turn coming out. So it will start to fade quicker. So when you're faced with a wind like this, quartering away from you, say I'm a right-hand backhand thrower, not only is the wind's going to push it left, but it's actually not going to turn as much. So it will get going left even quicker. So this will have a lot more left moving than what a two would what you think a two would do. Or if you threw a forehand into this and it's fighting back against the wind, it's not going to turn as much, and you'll find that this doesn't hardly go left of your target. All right, with the takes turn away. With a headwind, it will add turn to your disc, have the exact opposite effect. It also adds lift. So that's why our short putts lift up into the band. So, but just know that that headwind will lift your disc as well as push it back towards you. So those shorter shots, what you're going to see is you're going to see the lift. So you're not going to see the pushing back towards you because the disc is still at high velocity. So that explains why, when you're throwing into, let's say you're throwing a 90 footer with a 4 headwind and you account for that lift and it's just tracking for the chains. And then all of a sudden it just drops right into the cage. That is that the speed is getting lower. So that additional lift that lifted it up that wind is pushing your disc and is keeping it from holding its speed. So it kind of runs out of speed and then it has that dramatic drop at the end. Okay, so what do I mean by 2 dimensions? What I mean by that is that your nose angle on your disc isn't ever going to be affected by the wind. You're going to get the lift on the headwind, regardless of whether you're throwing up or downhill. In real life, if your disc were to have its nose up and the wind was exposed to the bottom of that flight plate, it would cause it to just shoot up into the air. On the other side of that, if it's nose down, which these are unrealistic nose angles, but that wind just beats it straight down into the ground. All right, you notice it a ton on putts. Okay, but in Disc Golf Valley, your nose angle, the nose of your putter is always going directly into the wind. So what do I mean by that? Okay, you're throwing straight into this beautiful 2 wind. I love my illustrations here, by the way. This is about the capability of my art right here. I'm like 2nd grade level. Anyways, the 2 wind will be acting directly on the nose of your disc. If you were to say be throwing up this hill, all right. So let's say we're throwing up this hill. That wind is still going directly towards your disc. You're not going to get any additional lift. All right. Throwing down the hill, same thing. All right. Your disc will still lift in a headwind throwing downhill. So this actually simplifies things. We only have to worry about how much forward, back, right to left is going to do. So let's take a look at what that actually does to the flight of the disc. Okay, so here, another great illustration. Let's say we have that 1 wind, and the 1 wind doesn't really affect your flight that much. But as it goes, let's just say this is a musket, right? And we throw it and it goes right back to the center line. Okay, if that wind's at 2 wind, it just pushes it a little bit out to the right, but it still has that same hookup. Gets back to the left. 3 wind, it pushes it a little bit further out, still hooking up, fading back towards the middle. 4 wind, same thing, going over here. Okay, now let's say there is a headwind, right? That 1 headwind, again, let's just say it doesn't change much. All right, that 2 headwind is starting to add more turn to this disc. So it's going to turn out here, and the fade, because it turns it to where it's coming over here, it's fading back to kind of straight. Add a 3, more of an effect. Add a 4, it gets over here. All right. So if you're looking at, how this affects both your flights, this shows you that I didn't, really line them up, because that one, the idea was that it was the same, but the headwind could potentially make your disc go. It will, most cases, depending on what disc you're throwing. It's going to make your disc go further right than a right wind, right? The stronger it is, the more that effect's going to be. Now I'm speaking in generalizations because we're talking about a musket and it has, X number of turn. I think it's, wanted to say it's like 2.5, right? It's got 2.5 turn. So that 2.5 turn, when the wind acts on it, it gets changed by a percentage. So that percentage is higher than, say, a Sampo. All right. So the Sampo just naturally better at fighting the wind. Its turn is like 1.93, I'm wanting to say. So because it's, 20% less turn, it will be 20% less affected by the wind. So now we're getting a disc that won't go as far out to the right. It's also a little more stable, so it's going to fight back quicker as well. So it varies disc to disc. I think it's just more more reason to have a variety of discs in your bag. Kind of be prepared to fight that wind when it shows up. Okay, so what's a good example of this in practice? We're going to look at this captain and the Cloudbreaker. Okay, so very similar in drag. That's this number right here, drag. It's lift, again, very similar. Turn, quite a bit different, 2.11, 2.2. That's actually a fairly big difference. It doesn't take much of a change on those numbers to make quite a big difference. And then fade being the exact same, 1.06. So for all intents and purposes, the only real difference between these two discs is the amount of turn. So because of that turn, you're going to have a ratio. The faded turn is going to make that captain quite a bit more understable. It has more turn to fight out of with that 1.06 fade. Whereas this Cloudbreaker, it is a Cloudbreaker 2022. Cloudbreaker 2022 doesn't turn as much, so that fade fights out much quicker. So let's throw a few shots with this and just see what it looks like. Okay, so gonna kind of set a baseline here. Straight pull, one wind. Right, kind of landing just to the right of that tree, the tree on the left. Okay, now we're gonna throw the captain, same line. Try to bump forward a little bit. Okay, we're going to this birch tree over here on the right. Now I've got two wind, slight tail, but the two wind pushing out to the right, you'll notice that disc goes to the exact same spot. So that slight bit of tailwind actually caused it to straighten up a little more. All right, more extreme example. We're going to have just as much turn taken off as pushed to the right. It actually gets a little bit further right on that one, but not what you would expect a 3 wind to do. Okay, we'll throw same line, captain. And again, you'll see it didn't even go as far right as the first one. All right, now there's some wobble involved in this, so I think you can see how close those are. I'm pretty sure, I throw another one here because that wasn't a great example. So here we go. That one turned out there kind of where that first one went. Stables up a little quicker. Okay, so now we're going to aim down a little bit, which will add turn as well. And you can see that kicks it out to kind of where that captain went the first time. So what that wind is really going to affect when you throw it at that normal height, you can see it actually got further right than the captain there. You throw it at normal height and it's not going to change much. When you put it nose down, it kicks it out more to the right. Okay, so I had that one went a little bit further right than you can see up there in the mini map. It went a little bit further right, but it was a wobble issue there too. It wobbled a little further left. This is a little more accurate here. I went quite a bit further right. So yeah, you can see there how much further right that went. So the captain by nature will be more affected by that wind. Okay, let's look at a head. You can see with the quartering in, that's really only about a 1.5 head. So that's really not going to turn it that much. Even though it's a 3 wind, it's that quartering into you wind. It's not a full effect of the 3 wind. So it's not going to have a huge push out to the right. Okay, captain, it gets turned and pushed further out to the right, and it just can't fight back. So you can see huge difference on that one. So let's talk a little bit more about the push. This is an extra turn captain. I don't know, you guys might have seen me post this in the What's the Play video for Northern Lights 9. But this thing will stay in the air forever, so it'll give me a chance to talk. But you can see it turns out to the right, and it gets caught in this pattern of getting pushed by the tailwind. It speeds up and it turns, but then the tailwind causes it to stable back up and turn left. It speeds up and it turns, and it just glides forever in the exact direction of the wind. Okay, so if at any point that disc drops faster, then it will just turn and burn into the ground because it's fairly understable. Okay, now what I wish I had done whenever I was thrown back here at Oak with this headwind was turn more into the wind. All right, so you can see same disc is a different stamp, but I'm getting that similar finishing over by this tree flight. But then we can see how much more, and I'm going to do my best here to not change the up and down. I'm just going to try to point myself into the direction of that wind a little more. You can see how much more it's going to affect it. Okay, look at the captain. Look how much more it goes right. So it never gets back to the left. It just veers off right, never comes back. God forbid we aim down a little bit. All right, now these are going off the planet. Okay, and the captain, this thing is going so far right. You know it. It's got no chance of coming back. So, okay, so what would an example of the best wind fighter disc be? I would think with the driver at least, it would be this gold. See how I can really nose it down and throw it into the wind. And it has the stability to fight back on that same angle. That captain, I mean, not the same angle, I aimed way lower, but that captain was way the heck over there. And this is a disc that has one of the lowest fade values, or excuse me, one of the lowest turn values in a driver. So it doesn't take a ton of hyzer to fight that headwind. Okay. So this one in particular is a windbreak, so that if wind has even less effect on it than normal. But I carry that water skip in there for that reason right there, to fight a headwind like that, and have a reliable shot. So I was planning on making a separate video about all the attributes, but let's just go ahead and look at windbreak now, since it affects what we're doing. What exactly is windbreak? So the game presents the wind to you as a 1, 2, 3, or 4, but it has a higher value in the code. So the windbreak will take that wind speed value, and when you have that windbreak flag in there, it knows that the normal windbreak value, which is 1, which multiplies by the wind, that gets changed to 0.75. Okay, so you take the wind value times 0.75, fancy way of saying 25% less wind. Okay, so that brings me to my last topic here, and I've been kind of dreading this, to be honest with you. I don't know really how to present it. All right, so one person already asked me about this, and I had to sidestep it. He noticed, hey, why aren't you throwing your windbreak hope? And I was bragging up this this re-stamp that I pulled from the free path on multiplayer. And well, why aren't you throwing your windbreak? The way you putt, I would think that would help you a bunch, help fight the wind. So I was kind of like, no comment, right? Because I didn't know what to say. But I ended up just kind of saying, hey, I just wanted to rep my Sambro here. And besides, I mean, the stamp is just so sick. But in reality, I wasn't ready to say why. I was kind of testing it because I didn't believe it to begin with. But the last thing I noticed in the code, digging through, specifically, relating to wind, was this one little line, and it's one of the first things when you select a disc, it figures out and it says, what type of disc are you throwing? If you're throwing a putter, it will set the windbreak value to 0.75 automatically. So all putters have windbreak inherently in them. So, okay, that means that a windbreak putter is like double windbreak, right? 0.75 times 0.75, you're getting like, 0.5454545. Unfortunately not. The way that it's written, again, you throw a putter, windbreak value gets set to 0.75 instead of 1. The windbreak will set the value to 0.75. So essentially, I don't know what order it does the checks, but let's just say it checks to see if you're throwing a putter. windbreak's 0.75. Now it checks to see if it's got windbreak. Cool. We're going to set it to 0.75. So I don't, it's a tough one. All right. So that's a tough one. You can kind of see why I've been hesitant in saying anything. Sammy's freaking stamp on this thing is so sick. This putter is so sick. I love the way it looks. It will find its way back into my bag because let's be honest, sticky doesn't really do anything. But the reality of this is it's a single attribute putter. It's just an accurate putter. So having windbreak on there is just a way to have a non-sticky putter. What does this mean? I mean, you just have to kind of look at a windbreak putter a little differently. You can use it as a putter that I guess you don't want to have any of the other putter attributes that could possibly come. The game forces two on pretty much every disc. So if you didn't want to have a heavy putter or one that's sticky, like say you wanted a putter that slid out just a little bit more, I guess you could put it on there and it would make a little bit of a difference. But the sticky material on the putter doesn't honestly do a ton. So you're not going to notice a huge change there. So what do I think the windbreak putter is? I think it is it's a flex. You know what? It's like you win globally, having a putter that says the true legend on it. This is essentially like carrying a second icon, which he doesn't have his number one icon up there, but you can see what I mean. Or bragging about that sick Christmas challenge win you had, or that sick putter that you designed that everybody is so excited to see. I just love that design still. But outside of that, its effectiveness isn't really that awesome. So, I know that I'm pretty sure that a lot of people, if they didn't already figure it out, they knew that it had a very minimal effect. I talked to Reese before I requested one, and he told me, I don't notice it on my partials. Maybe on a full throw, I noticed it a little bit. In reality, it was probably this way. But you're looking at a guy who used a pick to put a windbreak on a putter as well. It's still a cool putter. Again, another 6 stamp, Alexa stamp, very cool. Obviously, an incredible cause. So I would have donated the money that I did without a disc in return. But I'm not angry about this by any stretch of the imagination. So yeah, I guess that's really all I have to say about it. I didn't want to. I'm not trying to set the community into an uproar here, but windbreak on a putter doesn't do anything. Okay, so that's wind in a nutshell. So a very long, lengthy nutshell, but let me know what the next subject you want me to cover is. There's so much to do. I still have quite a bit to go through. What all of the attributes actually change. Some of that's common knowledge, but some of it, I figured out a little bit more about. Also, spin is a thing. And honestly, that's probably where my mind wants to talk about next, but there is an entire spin, RPMs on a disc that come into play, and it's fascinating. So that's where I'll probably go next, unless you guys let me know something else you'd rather me talk about first. But before I get going on that, I'm gonna maybe try to play a few multiplayer matches or something. I'm really falling behind, but thanks for watching, and I'll see you guys next time.